I was standing at the kitchen counter when I heard it. The kind of silence that follows a sentence meant to wound you gently, like a blade wrapped in velvet. My son didn't even look up from his suitcase when he said it. Mom, we just think the trip would be too much for you. It's 12 hours of flying. You know how your knees get. Just stay home this time. Watch the house for us. Watch the house. As if the walls needed me more than they did. As if Grandma was a job title I had signed a lifetime contract for. I didn't answer him. At my age, silence speaks louder than arguments. But inside something old and quiet began to rattle its cage. His wife chimed in while folding swimsuits into neat bright piles. We'll bring you something nice, okay? Maybe some olive oil from the islands. You love that. A souvenir. A consolation prize for being forgotten. The children, my grandchildren, hugged me distractedly on their way out. Already dreaming of beaches and clear blue water, I wasn't good enough to see with them. The front door closed, and their laughter faded into the driveway. Their car rolled away, and I stood in my own living room, small as a misplaced sock. I kept telling myself I shouldn't be surprised. I'd spent years smoothing over the moments when they leaned past me, spoke around me, decided things for me. But that morning something shifted, because when I went out to the mailbox, expecting a coupon booklet or an electricity bill, I found an envelope addressed to my son that hadn't been mailed. Their plane tickets. All 4. Departure in 3 days. It felt like the universe placing the truth right in my palms. They had planned to leave me behind long before they told me. My hands trembled, but not from weakness. No, from anger. From awakening. I carried the tickets inside, shut the door gently, and placed them on the table as if they were evidence of something sacred and terrible. For a moment I stood still. Then in a voice I didn't recognize as mine, steady, sure, alive, I whispered, "Not this time." I reached for the phone, dialed the travel agency, and when the young woman asked why I wanted to cancel all 4 tickets, I answered with nothing but the truth, because they assumed I wouldn't go. My voice didn't shake. My heart did, but in a way that felt like it was waking from a long sleep. After the call, I sat down, made myself a cup of tea, and stared at my reflection in the window. A woman with silver hair, strong hands, and eyes full of stories she'd never told stared back at me. I didn't know exactly what I would do next, but I knew one thing. For the first time in decades, I wasn't going to stay where they put me, and that was the beginning. But trust me, child, canceling their tickets was only the first crack in the shell. I had lived inside for far too long. You haven't heard the real storm yet. So stay close. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happened the next morning changed everything. I barely slept that night. Not out of guilt, not even out of fear, but out of a strange, buzzing aliveness I hadn't felt in years. My mind kept replaying the moment I'd canceled their tickets. Every quiet breath. Every assertive word. Every beat of my heart whispering, "You're allowed to want more." By dawn, I was sitting in the same kitchen chair where I had once nursed my son through fevers, taped school projects, and braided my granddaughter's hair. That chair had seen decades of me, soft, gentle, reliable. But that morning it carried a woman who felt like fire under her ribs. I opened the drawer where my passport lived, tucked between old coupons and a dried sprig of lavender. I ran my fingers over its navy cover. I hadn't held it in so long that it felt like touching an old friend you drifted from but never stopped loving. Still valid. Still real. Still mine. Then I checked my bank statements. Practicality is a habit age doesn't let you outgrow. I had enough to go somewhere. Maybe not 5-star dinners or luxury hotels, but enough for comfort, enough for yes, enough for not this time. I sat there a long while, hands folded tightly, staring at the passport as if it were daring me. And then quietly, almost shyly, I whispered to myself, "Helen, where have you always wanted to go?" The answer came so swiftly it startled me. Greece. Not because they were going there, though the irony wasn't lost on me, but because Paul, my husband, had once promised me we'd visit the islands for our 25th anniversary. He used to show me pictures torn from travel magazines, white houses curled into hillsides, seas so blue they looked painted, doors the color of stubborn hope. But life happened. Work shifts, bills, cancer, We never made it. When he died, I folded that dream away like a dress that no longer fit. Until that morning. My hands didn't shake when I booked my ticket. The website beeped softly as the confirmation appeared on the screen. Athens. 1 passenger. Helen. Departing in 2 days. I stared at my name, my full name. Not mom, not grandma, not can you watch the house. Just me. And I felt something rise in my throat. Not sadness. Not joy. But recognition. A woman I had misplaced long ago was tapping gently on the inside of my ribs, asking, "Are you ready to meet me again?" I packed slowly, deliberately. Comfortable shoes, my best scarf. The navy dress I'd worn only once after Paul's funeral, because it made me feel tall even when grief made me small. When I called my neighbor, Carol, to water my plants, she didn't even try to hide her surprise. "Going somewhere, hon?" "A little trip," I said. Her silence was full of questions, but she didn't ask them. Sometimes the people on the outside can sense when a chapter isn't theirs to edit. That evening, I stepped onto the porch and watched the street I'd spent 30 years walking. The houses were the same, but I felt different. Like someone leaning forward for the very first time. Just enough to shift the weight that had kept her still. My son hadn't called. Neither had Laura. But for once, their silence didn't press on me like a burden. Instead, it cleared space. And in that space, something new began to grow. But child, if you think booking the ticket was bold, wait until you hear what happened at the airport. Because that was the moment my old life tried to pull me back. Airports have a strange way of making you feel both very small and very possible. That morning, as I walked through the sliding doors with my single navy suitcase rolling behind me, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, like the world had cracked open, just wide enough for me to step into the version of myself I had buried. The noise swallowed me whole. Announcements chiming overhead, children whining, suitcases thumping against polished floors, people rushing past with a kind of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I moved slowly, yes, my knees aren't shy about complaining, but I moved with intention. At the check-in counter, the young woman behind the desk gave me one of those soft, pitying smiles reserved for the elderly. "Traveling alone today, dear?" I almost laughed. Dear. They always say it like a tiny apology for underestimating you. "Yes," I said. And quite happily. She blinked, caught off guard, but her smile warmed. She checked my passport, typed something quickly, then slid the boarding pass toward me with both hands, as though I might break. But it wasn't her softness that shook me. It was the sound behind me, my phone buzzing inside my purse. Once, then again. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. My son always called in bursts, like a man trying to beat down a locked door. I stepped aside, letting another traveler move forward. I stood by a column covered in travel ads, pictures of beaches and castles and promises. The phone buzzed again. I finally pulled it out and looked. 10 missed calls. David. 3 voicemails. 1 text message. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk." The words didn't come with anger. They came with a sudden tightness in my throat I hadn't expected. For a moment, just one fragile heartbeat, I felt the old version of myself stirring. The one who always said yes. The one who always stayed home just in case someone needed something. The one who folded her wants beneath everyone else's convenience. My thumb hovered over the callback button, and in that second the airport fell away. I heard Paul's voice, steady, gentle, the way he used to speak to me when I doubted myself. "Don't shrink, Helen. Not anymore." I closed my eyes, breathed, listened to the truth sitting heavy in my chest. Then I locked the phone, slipped it back into my purse, and stepped into the security line without looking back. My hands trembled a little, not from fear, but from the weight of choosing myself. It is a strange sensation, choosing yourself at 72. It feels both rebellious and overdue. Security took longer than expected. I had to take off my shoes, and my left heel cramps when I stand on cold floors. But even while wobbling through the metal detector, even holding onto the gray plastic bin like it was an anchor, I felt it, a small quiet pride. When I reached my gate, I sat near the window. The plane waited outside, white, gleaming in the morning sun, a beast of steel and promise. I whispered, "Paul, I'm really doing it." And for the first time since he passed, I didn't feel like I was talking to a memory. I felt like I was talking to hope. The final boarding call echoed overhead. I stood, straightened my scarf, and walked forward, not as someone's grandmother, not as someone's afterthought, but as a woman stepping into the life she still had left. But child, the moment that plane lifted off the ground, something inside me rose with it, something I had spent decades holding down. And what waited for me in Athens was not at all what I expected. The moment the plane wheels touched the ground in Athens, something inside me loosened, like a knot pulled too tight for too many years finally giving way. People around me were already unbuckling their seatbelts before the plane even stopped moving. I stayed still. I wanted to feel the moment, hold it gently in my hands. I had arrived somewhere no one expected me to be. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't arriving for anyone but myself. The airport was warm, bustling, aromatic with foreign spices and the faint scent of jet fuel. I moved slowly, letting the crowd flow around me. A young woman bumped into my shoulder and apologized quickly in Greek. I smiled, and for a reason I couldn't explain, my eyes stung. I wasn't invisible here. I was simply a traveler. Person. I claimed my little navy suitcase, the same one my son once teased me for keeping because, Mom, it's practically vintage. I wheeled it outside, where the air wrapped around me like a soft blanket that had been warmed by the sun. The taxi driver, a man with silver hair and kind eyes, loaded my suitcase into the trunk. First time in Greece? He asked. It is, I said, climbing in. But it's been whispering to me for a long time. He chuckled. Ah, then it called you home. Home. Such a heavy word when you've spent years feeling like a guest in your own life. The pension I booked was tucked in a narrow side street with flowers spilling over balconies. Inside, the dim lobby smelled of lemons and old books. A young receptionist handed me a brass key, not a card, an actual key, and said, "Welcome, Miss Helen. If you need anything, we are here." Miss Helen. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Not the reliable house sitter. Just me. The room was small but cozy, with white linens and soft golden light. I sat on the bed and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since before Paul passed. Travel doesn't erase grief, but it makes room for it to breathe differently. I changed my shoes, brushed my hair, and stepped back outside. The evening air hummed with distant music and clinking glasses. Children played soccer in the street. A woman called her dog from a balcony 2 floors up. Everything around me felt alive. And slowly so did I. I wandered the winding paths of Plaka until I found a tiny cafe tucked between 2 shops selling handmade jewelry. I ordered olives, warm bread, and a small glass of wine, my first in years. The waiter placed the plate before me, then paused. "You look like someone who has just done something brave," he said softly. I smiled at him, really smiled. "I think I have," I whispered back. As I ate, I noticed a couple at a nearby table. Older. Laughing. Holding hands across the table with a familiarity sharpened by years of loving and losing and loving again. For the first time since I left home, I wondered, not sadly but curiously, what Paul would say if he saw me now. I imagined him leaning back in his chair, grinning. "That's my Helen," he'd say. "I knew you still had a little rebellion in you." When I returned to my room, the city lights spilled through the curtains like warm water. I sat by the window and looked out at the narrow street below. And for reasons I didn't fully understand yet, I pressed my hand to the glass and whispered, "I'm here, Paul. I'm really here." My phone buzzed then, breaking the quiet. A message from my son. Just 2 words. "Call me." But I didn't. Not yet. Because for the first time in a very long time, my life wasn't happening through someone else's urgency. It was happening through my own breath. But child, if that first night felt like awakening, the next morning felt like a miracle. And it's where the story takes a turn I never saw coming. Stay close now. And don't forget to subscribe. I woke before the sun the next morning, something my bones hadn't cooperated with in years. Maybe it was jet lag, maybe it was excitement, or maybe it was that quiet stirring inside me, the one whispering, "Helen, the world is bigger than the kitchen you've been confined to." I washed my face, put on a bit of lipstick, the deep rose shade I hadn't worn since Paul was alive, and tied my scarf loosely around my neck. I felt, well, not young but capable, like a woman beginning her second story. I went downstairs to the little dining area of the pension. A few early risers sat scattered at tables, sipping coffee in that half-awake silence all travelers share. I took a seat near the window where the morning light brushed the table like a blessing. The waiter placed a simple breakfast before me. Toast, fruit, thick yogurt drizzled with honey. I was savoring it slowly when a voice cut through the quiet. "You're using too much honey." Not rude, not scolding, just observant, almost amused. I looked up. The woman standing before me was around my age, early 70s perhaps. Silver hair gathered into a loose bun. Eyes sharp as needles but warm as fresh bread. She wore a simple white blouse and carried a small leather notebook in her left hand. "Well," I said, sitting a little straighter, "I suppose I've earned the right." She smiled a slow, knowing smile. That's what I told myself at 60. 70. I told myself it wasn't enough. I laughed before I could stop myself. It felt strange, my laugh. I hadn't heard it that freely in years. "May I?" she asked, motioning to the chair across from me. "Please." She sat, setting her notebook on the table. "I'm Rosalie," she said. "From Lyon. Retired school principal. Traveling alone because my children are convinced I'll get lost or fall into the sea." I blinked. Something in my chest tightened. Not painfully but with recognition. "I'm Helen," I said softly. "And mine think I'm too old to travel." "Ah." Her eyes softened. "There are many ways to be misplaced in life, Helen." Instead I sipped my coffee. And she watched me with the kind of gaze only women who've survived entire eras of sacrifice can give each other. "Are you here for long?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I didn't plan very far. I just came." "Good." She nodded approvingly. Spontaneity feels reckless at our age, but really it's salvation. We talked for nearly an hour about Athens, about France, about our husbands. Hers had passed 8 years ago. "You learn to live with the quiet," she said. "But sometimes the quiet forgets you're still alive." Her words wrapped around my ribs like warm hands. When we finally rose from the table, she touched my arm. "Walk with me this evening," she said. "The city is different after dark. It listens more." I hesitated. Old habits of politeness, of staying predictable, tugged at me. But then I remembered the plane tickets. The closed door. The way my son had said, "Just watch the house." "All right," I said. A small word, but it felt like a step into something vast. Rosalie smiled as if she'd been waiting for that answer. Before she turned to leave, she added, "Careful now, Helen. This is how adventures begin." Quietly, with coffee and honesty. She walked away, and I felt the strangest flutter in my chest. Like the universe had slid a chair out for me at a table. I didn't know I'd been invited to. But child, I didn't know then that Rosalie wasn't just a traveling companion. She was the mirror I'd been afraid to look into for years. And the woman who'd soon pull me into a choice that would shake my whole family. Rosalie met me in the lobby, just as the sun dipped low enough to paint the buildings gold. She'd changed into a loose linen dress, simple, elegant, the kind of effortless confidence I had forgotten women our age were allowed to have. "You ready, Helen?" she asked. I nodded, though truthfully. My nerves fluttered like moths trapped behind my ribs. Not because I was afraid of the city, but because something in me sensed that walking beside Rosalie meant walking away from who I used to be. We stepped out into the warm evening, and Athens opened itself to us like a living story. Streets humming with laughter. Strangers chatting outside cafes. The faint music of someone's radio drifting from a balcony. It all felt larger than life and strangely comforting. Rosalie led us down winding alleys, across small squares lined with orange trees, and up gentle slopes where the scent of grilled herbs danced in the air. "It's strange," I said as we walked. "I feel like I've been asleep for years." "Many of us are," she replied. "The world teaches women to disappear quietly, until we forget we were ever meant to take up space." She said it so easily, as though naming a secret we all carried in our bones. We reached a lookout point where the city sprawled beneath us, glowing in the soft blue of early dusk. We stood there in silence for a long time. Two old women who had lived entire lifetimes, but were only now beginning to live for themselves. Then my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, but it buzzed again, and again, and again. Rosalie raised an eyebrow. "Persistent, whoever it is." I sighed and pulled it from my purse. 13 missed calls. 8 texts. All from my son. One message sat at the bottom, sent only minutes earlier. Mom, we didn't know. Please call me. It's important. Important. A word that carried weight only because it came from someone who rarely used it with me unless he needed something. My stomach tightened. Rosalie watched my face gently. Family? She asked. Yes. She nodded, not prying. Do you want to answer? I looked at the glowing screen, at the name I had once dropped everything for, at the number that had dictated so much of my time, my presence, my identity. And suddenly, I felt the entire truth rise through me like a slow, inevitable tide. I'm not ready, I whispered. Rosalie took my hand. Not romantically, not dramatically, just kindly. Like two women holding onto the railing of a storm they both survived in different ways. Then don't, she said. You don't owe anyone your peace on demand. Her words settled into me with a warmth I didn't know I needed. We continued walking, the city glowing brighter as the sky darkened. I felt lighter with every step, as though choosing myself created room in my body that had been taken up by decades of quiet obligation. Later, we sat at a small outdoor cafe and shared a plate of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. Rosalie talked about her travels, Italy, Morocco, Ireland, and every story carried a lesson she'd learned too late and refused to let die with her. You know, she said, sipping her wine, the first lie they tell us is that life gets smaller as we age. And the second? I asked. That we must accept it. I felt my throat tighten, because she was right, so painfully right. As we walked back to the pension, my phone buzzed once more. Just one message. Mom, are you safe? And that was the one that pierced me. Because it wasn't guilt or anger. It was fear. Real fear. For me. But even then I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but because the version of me they were suddenly worried about no longer existed. I climbed into bed that night exhausted, but awake in a way I hadn't been in decades. I stared at the ceiling and whispered into the darkness. I'm safe. I am. For the first time I really am. But child, that wasn't the end of it. Because the next morning, something happened that forced me to choose. Truly choose between the life I left behind and the life I was beginning to claim. Stay with me. And don't forget to subscribe. The sun rose softly over Athens the next morning, its first light spilling through the thin curtains like a quiet invitation. But I didn't feel peaceful. Not yet. I woke with a heaviness in my chest, the kind that comes when your past and present finally notice each other and begin circling like wary animals. My phone, still face down on the nightstand, buzzed once, then again, then fell silent, as if even it was holding its breath. Breakfast was quieter that morning. Not many travelers awake yet. Rosalie waved when she saw me and motioned for me to sit. You look troubled, she said plainly. I didn't bother pretending. I think something's wrong at home. She placed her coffee cup down carefully. And do you think they want you to fix it? I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because admitting it aloud felt like opening an old wound. Yes, I whispered. Ah. Rosalie nodded, her expression thoughtful, almost sad. It's hard when you've spent your life being the one who held everything together. They forget you're allowed to let go. Her words settled into the pit of my stomach like a stone. I reached for my phone. One new message from my son. A single line. Mom, please. We need to talk. My fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. A knot formed in my throat, the old, familiar knot that had shaped my life for decades. The one that whispered, they need you. Go back. Be small again. It's what you're good at. I tried to breathe past it. Rosalie watched me carefully. Answer if you want, she said softly. But don't answer out of fear. Fear. Yes, that's exactly what it was. Fear of hurting them. Fear of disappointing them. Fear of being accused of selfishness for wanting even a little piece of my own life. With a long, shaky breath, I pressed the call button. The ring barely had time to echo once. My son answered immediately. Mom. His voice cracked. Just that one word, raw, rushed, unfamiliar. I'm here, I said quietly. Are you okay? Why aren't you answering? We've been calling non-stop. Amelia is worried sick. I closed my eyes. My granddaughter, sweet, bright-eyed Amelia. Her worry was the one thing that pierced through the armor I'd been building. I'm safe, I said. There was a pause, long trembling. Where are you? He asked. I looked out the window. The rooftops of Athens shone in the morning sun, stubborn and beautiful. Away, I said simply. Mom, this isn't like you. You disappeared without telling anyone. You canceled our tickets. I canceled my silence. I interrupted, my voice steadier than I expected. Another pause. Something shifted in his breathing. A realization maybe. Or a wound. Mom, he said slowly. We didn't think it mattered to you. We thought traveling would be too much. We thought we were protecting you. My heart twisted. Protecting me. The oldest excuse in the book. You weren't protecting me. I whispered. You were deciding for me. The line grew so quiet I wondered if it had disconnected. Then, can you come home? He asked softly. And there it was. The question that held the weight of a lifetime. For decades, I had answered questions like that without thinking. Yes, of course. I'll be there. Whatever you need. But now I felt something rise inside me. Not anger, not defiance. But truth. I don't know, I said honestly. His breath hitched. Mom, please. I'm not coming home because I'm expected to. I said gently. I'll come home when I'm ready. When I feel seen. Not when I feel summoned. Silence again. The kind that aches. I love you, he said quietly. I know. I answered. And I love you. But that doesn't mean I have to disappear for you. I ended the call before my courage faltered. My hands shook. Tears threatened. But for once they weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of becoming. Rosalie slipped her hand over mine. You didn't break anything. She whispered. You just stopped bending. And God, that truth wrapped around my ribs like a blessing. I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. But child, that call was only the beginning. Because the very next day, someone unexpected reached out. Someone whose voice would turn everything upside down. Stay close. And don't forget to subscribe my channel. I didn't leave the pension that morning right away. My conversation with David had left my nerves humming, like a violin string plucked too hard. Not painful, just awake. Too awake. Rosalie knocked gently on my door around 9. We're going to take a slow day, she declared without asking. Your heart needs walking, not wandering. I smiled despite the heaviness behind my ribs. She always seemed to sense things before I said them aloud. We walked without purpose. Down narrow streets lined with tiny shops, past cats curled in patches of sunlight, toward the quieter parts of the city, where laundry hung from balconies like small flags of ordinary life. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed with another message from David. Short ones now. Call when you can. We just want to know you're all right. Please. The urgency in his words softened something in me, but didn't erase the years of being overlooked. Rosalie noticed my distracted glances at the phone. Your son loves you, she said. But love without understanding can feel like a leash. I breathed out slowly. She was right again. We found a bench under a fig tree and sat quietly for a while. The shade felt comforting, as if the sun itself had agreed to give me a moment to gather myself. Helen, Rosalie said gently, do you regret leaving? I took my time answering. Not to be dramatic, just truthful. No, I said. I regret waiting as long as I did. She nodded, satisfied. We sat there until the breeze picked up and carried the scent of grilled peppers from a nearby cafe. Rosalie suggested lunch, but I wasn't hungry yet. Not for food. Anyway, as we walked back to the pension, the manager waved us over. Mrs. Helen, he said, slightly out of breath. Something came for you. For me. I frowned. No one knew where I was. No one except Rosalie, Carol, and my son, and he would never send something abroad without calling first. The manager reached behind the counter and held out a folded piece of paper. No envelope, no stamp, just my name written in hurried, familiar handwriting. I knew it before I touched it. My daughter-in-law, Laura. My heart tightened in that old, familiar way, part bracing, part resignation. Rosalie's eyebrows lifted. Are you going to open it? Not here. I said, my voice smaller than I intended. We went up to my room together. But she stayed by the window, giving me space without stepping away entirely. I unfolded the paper slowly. Her handwriting was rushed, shaky, almost uneven. Helen, we're trying to understand. Please believe that. We know now that we made you feel unnecessary. That wasn't our intention. But intentions don't heal. Words do. David is worried. I am too. The children miss you. They ask about you every day. If you need time, take it. Just don't shut us out completely. We are sorry. Truly. Please come home when you can, and when you want to. Laura. My hands trembled, not from anger this time. From something more complicated. Something softer. I sat down on the edge of the bed, reading her words again and again. Rosalie approached quietly. Her voice low, steady. And how does that make you feel? I let the silence fill the space between us before I answered. Like they're beginning to see me. I whispered. And that scares them. And you? I swallowed hard. I don't know yet. She touched my shoulder gently. That's all right. Helen. Answers come slow when wounds are old. I folded the letter carefully, respectfully, and set it on the nightstand. I wasn't ready to go home. I wasn't even ready to forgive. But something inside me shifted. Like a door unlocking just one hesitant inch. A beginning. Not an ending. But child, that wasn't the only message waiting for me that day. Because just a few hours later, someone reached out who hadn't spoken my name in years. And what they told me set my heart racing in a way I still struggle to explain. Stay with me till the end. The letter from Laura still sat on the nightstand, folded like a quiet promise I wasn't sure I could accept yet. I tried to push it aside, but my thoughts kept circling it like moths around a lamp. I decided to take the small balcony outside my room. The city stretched below me, sun-bleached rooftops dotted with terracotta, pots and laundry fluttering like banners of lives I'd once inhabited and now felt outside of. And then my phone buzzed again. I hesitated, not with fear, not with anger, but with that cautious weight of old habits. The habit of being overlooked, of ignoring voices that might hurt me if I answered. The screen read a number I hadn't seen in years. 1. I had tried not to remember. It was him. My heart stumbled. Hello. I said, my voice smaller than I expected. Helen. The voice said. A tremor of age and time wrapped around the syllables. Familiar yet strange. It's me. For a moment nothing existed but that sound. A voice I had buried under years of distance and disappointment. David's father? I asked cautiously, though I already knew. Yes. I didn't know where else to reach you. He said. Each word deliberate, almost hesitant. I've been watching, I suppose. Hearing things I shouldn't have, too late maybe. But Helen, there's something you need to know before you make any decisions about going home. My pulse quickened. I sat down heavily on the balcony ledge, gripping the railing. What is it? I asked, barely breathing. There's more than the letters. Helen, more than apologies. Laura, David, they're sincere. Yes, but there are things about the family, about us, that have been kept from you. Things that might explain why it took so long for them to see you. Why I never tried harder myself. I frowned, confusion mixing with the old ache I'd carried for years. Why now? I whispered. He sighed, a sound heavier than the phone line could carry. Because the truth doesn't wait. And because I think finally you deserve to hear it from me. Not rumors, not half sentences, but everything. The whole story, Helen. If you'll let me. I swallowed hard. My chest felt tight yet electric. Something was shifting beneath the familiar weight of my doubts. I don't know if I can. I started. You can, he said gently. Because you've already started. By reading Laura's letter, by being here, by feeling again. That's courage. Helen. And sometimes the hardest courage is the kind that comes from waiting too long. I closed my eyes. A gust of wind lifted the edge of the letter on the nightstand, brushing it against my fingers. The sunlight caught it, flickering like a candle flame. I'll listen, I said finally, and the word felt like stepping into a room I had once locked the door on. Good, he replied, relief threading through his voice. Then meet me at the cafe near Piazza di Santa Croce. Noon. Just us. No one else. I'll tell you everything. I hung up and leaned back, the city spinning softly around me. My heartbeat was a drum, steady and alive. For the first time in a long time I didn't feel alone. Not entirely. Rosalie appeared quietly at the doorway, a soft shadow against the sunlit wall. You spoke to him, she said. Yes, I admitted. And he wants me to meet him. Her lips curved in that knowing, gentle smile of hers. Then go. Hear what you need to hear. The rest we can handle later. I nodded, folding Laura's letter one last time, tucking it safely into my bag, because the day I thought would end with apologies, and hesitant, homecomings was about to reveal something far more dangerous, and far more necessary, something that might change everything. I believed about my family, about myself, and about the years I thought I had lost. And in that moment, standing on the balcony with the city stretching before me, I realized the story was far from over. It had only just begun. I walked toward the door, heart racing, unaware that shadows from the past were already moving to meet me. And not all of them were kind. What I would hear at that cafe would either break me or finally set me free. The streets were warmer than I expected. The late morning sun spilling gold across cobblestones that had known my hesitant footsteps before. I kept my bag close, Laura's letter inside, my heart drumming a steady, nervous rhythm. The cafe by Piazza di Santa Croce came into view, tucked under an ochre awning, the scent of espresso mingling with the faint tang of baked bread. He was already there, seated at a corner table, hands folded, a book forgotten in front of him. When he saw me, he stood slowly, as if every movement had to be measured. Careful. Helen, he said, and it wasn't just a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of all the years, all the silences and all the space between us. I sat across from him, hands trembling slightly around my bag strap. The cafe was bustling with ordinary life. Tourists laughing, waiters carrying trays of cappuccinos, a violinist tuning softly in the corner. And yet, the moment felt suspended, like the air itself was holding its breath. I'm listening, I said, trying to steady my voice. He nodded. His eyes, the same shade as David's, softened. I'll start from the beginning. But I need you to promise me something first. What? Promise that you won't judge me for what I'm about to say. Not yet. I hesitated, then nodded. I promise. He took a deep breath. Years ago, before you left, or before you thought you had, there were things happening that you never saw. Things I should have told you. But I didn't. I thought I was protecting you, protecting the family, but I failed. You felt invisible. And in a way that was true. I failed to speak and others failed to see. I felt the old familiar ache rising, the one that had made me pack a bag and leave without looking back. Why now? I whispered. Because. The truth is like fire, he said. It doesn't stay buried forever. And because there's something you need to know about David, something he couldn't tell you himself. My pulse quickened. Every nerve in my body was alert. A mixture of fear and anticipation. He wasn't just distant because of life's chaos, my father-in-law said carefully. There were complications in our family finances, secrets about debts and losses, things that, wrongly, led him to believe that pulling away from you would protect you. And then, Laura, she thought she was shielding you too, trying not to upset you. I sat back, stunned. They all thought they were protecting me? My voice trembled. He nodded. Yes, but it was misguided. And it hurt you in ways none of us realized until it was almost too late. Until you left. Now we're trying to fix it, starting with you. A silence fell between us, filled only by the clinking of cups and the violinist's gentle tune. The truth was heavier than I had imagined. Pain softened by explanation, but still painful. I realized something then. I had been angry. Yes, but also lonely for understanding. And here it was, fragile and imperfect, finally reaching me. I don't know if I can forgive so quickly, I said quietly. You don't have to, he said. Just hear me. That's enough for now. I nodded. My fingers found Laura's letter again. and I held both the past and the present in my hands. A strange, trembling hope rose in me, cautious but undeniable. And just as I was beginning to think the revelations had ended, my father-in-law leaned closer, lowering his voice. "There's one more thing, Helen. Something that David never knew he should tell you himself. Something that changes everything." I felt my breath catch. My heart raced and 1,000 questions rose at once. "Tell me," I whispered. And with that, the final piece of the puzzle, the one that had haunted me for years, began to fall into place. Because the truth waiting in that cafe was not just about mistakes or misunderstandings. It was about a secret so carefully hidden, it had the power to rewrite everything. I thought I knew about my family, and when I finally heard it, I realized my life had been teetering on the edge of revelation and betrayal all along. The cafe seemed to shrink around me, the bustling world outside fading into a blur. His eyes held mine, steady and unflinching, as though he were the only anchor in the storm of my own thoughts. "There's something," he said slowly, "that David never knew how to tell you. Something he only realized recently, but it changes everything." My pulse quickened. I leaned forward, every nerve in my body alert, heart hammering like a drum I hadn't heard in years. "What is it?" I whispered, though a part of me already feared the answer. He swallowed, his hands folding and unfolding on the table. "Helen, the reason your absence felt like it never mattered. Why Laura and David seemed distant. Why letters never reached you properly. It wasn't just carelessness. There was an intervention. From within the family. Someone tried to keep you away." I blinked, disbelief colliding with a familiar ache. "Keep me away? Why? Who?" His eyes flickered with guilt, shame, and something else I couldn't name. "It was me," he admitted, voice low. "I thought I was protecting you, protecting them, but all I did was create walls between us. I interfered with letters, with calls. I convinced Laura it was safer if you didn't know certain truths. I didn't see, I didn't understand how much it hurt you until now." My stomach dropped. Anger and relief tangled inside me. Anger because the isolation had been deliberate. Relief because someone, finally, was telling the truth. "You did this? All these years?" My voice trembled. He nodded. "I thought I was doing right by you. I was wrong. And David, he had no idea. None. He blamed himself. Blamed the world. And you. And now I have to tell you everything, or it'll never end." My hands clenched the edge of the table. "Everything." "Yes, everything," he said, leaning closer, urgency threading through his words. "Your family has debts. Yet, but not just financial. Secrets that could ruin us all if exposed. And you were caught in the middle. Not because of you, never because of you. You were protected in the worst way possible, by being left in the dark." I swallowed hard. My mind raced back through the years, letters that never arrived, calls that were strangely vague, the constant ache of being unseen. Every hurt now had a name and a face. "Why? Why tell me now?" I asked, my voice softer. "Because you deserve to know," he said simply. "And because you've already started the journey back to us. We can't rebuild with lies in the foundation. Not anymore." I exhaled slowly, the tension in my chest easing just slightly. I realized then that I had been carrying not just disappointment, but a curated version of truth, one I had believed all these years. And now it was unraveling. He paused, searching my face. "Helen, I know it's a lot. I know it may feel like betrayal, but I need you to understand. Every mistake, every silence, every delay, it was never about not caring. It was about fear. Fear of losing you, fear of failing you. And I failed anyway." Tears blurred my vision. I wasn't sure if I was angry, relieved, or just exhausted from the weight of so many hidden years. I don't know if I can forgive yet," I admitted, voice cracking. "But I understand. I hear you. That's all I'm asking for," he said, relief softening his tone. "Just to hear me, and maybe start again slowly." I nodded, and in that moment, I realized something fragile but undeniable. The path forward would not be simple. It would not erase the past, but it could be honest. And honesty, I understood for the first time in years. Was something I had hungered for more than anything. But just as I felt the first threads of understanding weaving between us, my phone buzzed. Another message. Not from David. Not from Laura. But from someone whose voice I hadn't heard in decades. And this time, Helen. The truth waiting on the other end was far darker and far closer than anything I had imagined. The buzz of my phone made my chest tighten. I hesitated, staring at the screen as if the digits themselves could tell me whether to answer. It wasn't David. Not Laura. Not anyone I recognized immediately. The number was unfamiliar, but something in it stirred a memory I couldn't place at first. I swallowed, fingers trembling, and opened the message. Helen, it's time, you know. Everything you think you left behind, it's not over. Meet me. Tonight. Or it's too late. No name. No signature. Just the words. But I knew. I knew that voice, even if the sender had hidden behind anonymity, even if decades had passed. Memories collided like crashing waves. The faint smell of smoke, the hurried whispers behind closed doors, the nights I had spent pacing the floor of my childhood home, wondering why adults seemed to fear me more than love me. Rosalie, who had followed me quietly to the balcony, noticed my pallor. What is it? She asked gently. I handed her the phone, my hands shaking. I don't know. But I think someone from my past, they found me. Her eyes narrowed, instinct sharpening. From before the family? From the days you thought you'd left behind? I nodded slowly. Yes. And it's urgent. They said, too late if I don't meet them. Rosalie's lips pressed together. Helen, you need to be careful. We don't know what kind of danger this person brings. Or why they've waited so long. I chewed my lip, torn between curiosity, fear, and the desperate need for closure that had been gnawing at me for years. I have to know, I whispered. I can't not go. Not now. She sighed but didn't argue. Instead, she handed me a small scarf. Then go prepared. Take someone with you. Even if they don't come in, someone to watch your back. I nodded, slipping the scarf around my neck. My heart thumped like a warning drum. The city's familiar streets seemed foreign now, shadows longer, corners darker. Every step toward the meeting place felt like a test. I arrived at a narrow alley behind an old church, the kind of place that had no tourists, no laughter, just the scent of aged stone and damp earth. A figure emerged from the shadows. I froze. Helen, the voice said. And there it was. That tone, soft, precise, impossible to forget. The person who had haunted my childhood and my early adult years. Someone I had never truly escaped. It was her. Or him. The face I had hoped never to see again. And yet here they were, standing only a few feet away, the air between us thick with unspoken histories. You don't understand, the figure said urgently, taking a cautious step closer. Everything that happened. All the letters, the misunderstandings, the absence, it was never random. There are forces, things you were never meant to see. But now, Helen, you have to know before it's too late. My hands trembled. My pulse raced. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to forget. But something deeper, something that had been building for years, pulled me forward. I'm listening, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Tell me. They nodded once, sharply, as if steeling themselves. Then listen carefully. Because what you learn tonight will change everything you thought you knew about your family, your past, and yourself. And with that, the alley seemed to shrink, the shadows deepening around us. The truth I had been chasing for decades was finally ready to strike. Helen, the secret waiting in the shadows isn't just a memory. It's a threat. And when you finally hear it, the lines between family, loyalty, and betrayal will blur in ways you never imagined. The alley seemed to swallow us both in its narrow stone walls, the shadows pressing closer as the figure took a careful step forward. My heart raced, not from fear alone, but from the weight of anticipation I had carried for decades. Helen, the figure said, voice low but sharp. You need to understand something before you make any choices about your family, about your past, about yourself. I clenched my fists. I'm listening. Say it. They drew a deep breath. Years ago, before you left, there were people in your family who wanted to control decisions you had no knowledge of. Some of it was money, yes. Some of it was fear. Fear that you would expose truths that were never meant to see the light. That's why letters didn't arrive. That's why calls never reached you. Not everyone wanted to hurt you. Some thought they were protecting the family, but the secrecy, it almost destroyed everything. I felt my stomach drop. All this time, I was being kept from my own life. Yes, they said. And there's more. Some of those who orchestrated it are still watching. They don't want you to reconcile. They want control. You've already taken steps to reclaim your place, by speaking to David's father, by reading Laura's letter, but the danger isn't gone. My pulse quickened. I realized then that the letters, the delays, the silences, they weren't just mistakes. They were part of a carefully hidden network of secrets, the kind that could ruin trust and love if exposed wrongly. Why tell me now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because you're ready, the figure said. And because if you don't act, they'll try to silence the truth permanently. You have the power to reclaim what was stolen, Helen. But it won't be easy. You'll need to confront them, and confront yourself. I swallowed hard, every nerve alive. For decades I had been running from anger, from disappointment, from invisibility. And now, the fight wasn't just for my past. It was for my future. I understand, I said finally, though my hands shook. Tell me who I need to face. Tell me how to fix this. The figure nodded. Start with your family. They're the key. They don't know the full scope yet, and neither do you. But the threads are connected. Meet with David and Laura. Let them see the truth, and together you can end the control from outside forces. And Helen, trust your instincts. They've kept you safe longer than you realized, even when the world seemed against you. I breathed in deeply, feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. This was more than reconciliation. It was reclamation. My life, my choices, my heart. Finally mine to hold fully. The figure stepped back, melting into the shadows. Be careful. But don't hesitate. Time is already moving faster than you think. I watched them disappear, and for the first time in years I felt fully awake. Not just alive but ready. I returned to the pension, carrying the weight of revelations but also a quiet resolve. Rosalie greeted me with her usual knowing smile, and I realized she had never doubted that I would face this moment. We need to go home, I said, my voice steady now. She nodded. And this time, Helen, you go as the one in control. Call David first. My voice didn't shake. I told him to meet me at the same cafe we had spoken at before. Laura joined soon after. When we sat together, I saw the nervousness in their eyes, the same fear I had carried for years. I need to tell you both everything, I began. And I did. About the letters, the delays, the manipulations, the forces that had tried to keep me away. About my conversations with David's father. About the shadow from my past who had guided me tonight. I expected disbelief, anger, maybe even denial. But instead, I saw understanding. They listened. They cried. They apologized, not just for their mistakes, but for the ways they had been silent or misled. And in their eyes I saw the love I had longed for, finally unbroken by fear and secrecy. Mom, David said, taking my hand. I never wanted you to feel invisible. I see you now. I've always loved you, even when I didn't know how to show it. Laura squeezed my other hand. And I'm sorry for the letters, for the hesitation. I thought I was protecting you. I see now I was just keeping you from us. Please, let us make it right. I looked at them, my heart full. And I realized that forgiveness wasn't a single moment. It was a choice renewed every day. Today, I was ready to choose it. We spent hours talking, planning, sharing memories and new hopes. The city outside glowed with the late afternoon sun, warm and golden, like it had been waiting for me to come home. When I finally returned to my room at the pension, I folded Laura's letter once more and placed it carefully on the nightstand. For the first time in years I felt whole, not because the past was erased, but because the present was finally honest. Rosalie appeared at the doorway, smiling softly. And? She asked. And? I said, closing my eyes, letting a deep breath fill me. We're beginning. Not ending. But beginning. Together. That night I sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below like stars fallen to earth. I thought about the shadows, the secrets, the fear, and the long years of waiting. And I understood something profound. The truth doesn't just set you free. It gives you the courage to step into life fully, to embrace the people you love, and to finally see yourself clearly. I was home. Not just in the city, not just with my family, but within myself. And for the first time in a long time, it felt right.